new month is here, and that means it's time for another monthly discussion. And as always, Sam,
Thanks for having me.
thanks for continuing to come back. I thought somebody would be tired of me by now. But it's been I want to say about a year since we've been doing this, so I think it might have been either this month last year or the month before, or April last year. But I know at some point, like around this time last year, we recorded together for the first time. So it's hard to believe that it's been a year.
Wow.
Yeah, we've known each other for a year.
That's crazy.
I agree. I remember our first video because I remember continuously complaining about the landscapers outside my window. Or I think that was the first video. It might have been the second one, or I don't remember. It was one of the early ones, but I remember continuing complaining about the landscapers. But no landscapers today because it's pretty crappy out for anybody to be outside. As we talked about a little bit before we started recording. But I know we talked about this a little bit before in previous videos, but well, since what we would say maybe SummerSlam of last year, or maybe that's being a little too critical, but the WWE has had a ratings problem. Is that for probably 6 months at this point? Is that fair to say?
At least, I would say.
Now, a lot of people, are quick to say, oh, that just means they gotta get more attitude. They gotta go back to the Attitude Era. Do you think it's that quick of that much of an easy fix? Or do you, or would you agree that maybe there's more issues that need to be addressed than just the content, like the content rating? That's what it's called for the show, or the programming rating?
I think this has been a long time, coming. Like, I don't think it's just one fix.
Yeah, you don't think it's one thing that can fix all, like fixing, like moving from PG to TV-14, like they were, even as recent as the Ruthless Aggression era, I believe.
Yeah, it's not just going to be one thing that's going to fix everything.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think that the real question is that WWE needs to ask themselves, and I'm going to ask you, do you think that the company still books for ratings like they used to, or do you think it's too tough to really know what WWE is doing because, well, we're not we're not there. It's like, I know that's like there's no way to know. Like, do you think that they still have that philosophy to book to get a rating, or do you, like, what do you think?
I don't.
Well, let me rephrase the question. WCW used to always book for the rating. They used to book to pop the rating. They never really cared about the long-term plan. They cared about winning that week. WWE always had the long-term plan, and you could always tell, oh, they know where they're going, and that it would pay off eventually. Do you think that philosophy on either side can still be used nowadays, or do you think that's impossible to work now?
No, I don't think it's impossible. Sorry. I don't even... I kind of think they just need a whole, like, refresh of, like, creative and get rid of a bunch of people.
I mean, I agree, and I've been talking about this on the site because I often, or recently, I've been doing the, highlights, or taking the, watching highlight videos of the shows and taking the biggest point of each show to talk about in the videos. And, this week I changed it up and basically said, because, I mean, I don't know, I know you don't watch, but I'm sure you probably heard that the last couple weeks of programming have not been the best. That recently SmackDown scored, either last week or 2 weeks ago, they scored a 1.8, which I believe was the lowest rated SmackDown in a while. And Raw hasn't been doing much better.
It's surprising.
Yeah, it's not, but I suggested in the articles that the company needs to rebuild, and it seems like they forgot how to, because it's not like they haven't done it before. They did it when, they did it in 2004 when all those guys, the fresh off Austin leaving and Rock leaving and Brock and Goldberg leaving. They did it then and, started building around Cena and Batista and Edge and Randy Orton. And they did it when Hogan left, with the new generation, and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. But it feels like they don't know how to do it anymore. Or maybe Vince has just lost interest in, doing that type of thing where he structures the company around. I mean, yeah, fine, Roman Reigns, but to say Roman Reigns is on the same level as Cena was at his height, or even Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, I don't see it. I don't see Roman Reigns reaching that level. Same with Seth Rollins. I don't see either one of them reaching that level. And it just seems like they've forgotten how to rebuild the company.
Yeah. 100% agree.
And the one thing that stuck out, and I'll, take it from the article is, and, I don't know how, well, first, how do you feel about the nostalgia acts coming back? Like last year, not about the Saudi Arabia show, but the return, like the amount of returns that we had with Mick Foley on that week, and Shawn Michaels, and, Taker, and all those guys coming back, and what we will eventually see heading to June 3rd, which I believe is the next Saudi Arabia show, with Goldberg eventually coming back, and Brock coming back, and Taker coming back. Like, how do you feel about those nostalgia acts returning? I mean, I guess Brock isn't a nostalgia act, but Goldberg and Taker are. But, like, what is your opinion on that?
Honestly, I'm kind of over it. I think they need to worry more about, promoting the people that pushing the people that they already have, and stop worrying about, bringing back the same people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I completely agree, and I said that it seems like they've forgotten that the past is supposed to be used to put over the future, or the present, and not where the past is supposed to be always the top of the card. I mean, the best benefit of this year's WrestleMania was Triple H actually got a win in a major match for the first time in a while, to give him a little bit more credibility back, I mean, yeah, fine. Oh, Batista didn't have. Batista did good. Batista did fine in his match, and it allowed Triple H to get a win at WrestleMania for the first time since I think his Sting match. I think it was his Sting match. That was his first. He lost like 4 WrestleManias in a row. I mean, yeah, you might say, oh, what about his Dean Ambrose match from Roadblock a few years ago? I didn't really count that because, like, how could you count a match that you know he's not going to lose? You know what I mean? Like, you have to count matches that you would believe that he could possibly win. But if you know he's going to lose, then you can't really count the match because you know he's going to lose. But, I mean, Triple H still has credibility Triple H is probably the only legend at this point that I don't mind seeing come back because he's still directly involved with the company and has a purpose to come back to put over the younger talent. But is Seth in a better place after having a victory over Triple H? Is Roman in a better place after holding a victory over Triple H? No. Roman holds a victory over Brock, Taker, and Triple H, and is still nowhere close to their level. And it's problematic for the company because those guys, especially Cena, with Cena now gone, pretty much, they don't have that major star. I mean, The Miz is, in my opinion, The Miz is a bigger star than Roman Reigns. Because The Miz is a more mainstream star than Roman Reigns. In my opinion.
No, I agree with
I know we've talked about this before, but the main focus of the second part of the article was that, in my opinion, the place for the company to start is to sit down with the current champions, that being Seth Rollins, Kofi Kingston, Samoa Joe, Hawkins and Ryder while they are still the champions before they drop it to the Viking Experience, Daniel Bryan and Rowan, Becky Lynch, all the main roster champions, and let them have a say. Let them ask them, who do you think that if you worked with, you could get the best possible match out of? Who do you think that, like, where do you want to go with your reign? And then based on the amount of people that they come up with, like Joe could have a good match with this person and that person and this person. And based on that, decide, okay, oh, wait, Intercontinental, Finn Balor. I forgot about him. Based on that, decide, okay, that means we can keep the belt on these guys, on Joe for 6 months. We can maybe keep the belt on Balor for 8 months. Oh, Seth Rollins can feud with these guys, but we want to take the belt off of Rollins by, SummerSlam, and, have somebody new hold the belt. Fine. But then keep the belt, but at least you have a plan on where you're going, like you used to, where you could tell somebody 6 months out that they're going to win the title in 6 months. And then let WrestleMania be the cap and say, by WrestleMania, we want these people to be hold the title and these people to be the challengers. And then we're going to start over the plan, sitting down with the talent again after WrestleMania, asking them, who do you think you could feud with? Who could you have the best possible match with? Blah, 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 blah. And start the process all over again, because at least then you could start by having an idea of who you want to get momentum on, who you need to keep on television, and where you're going with the talent to make sure you always have them on TV doing something. But also, you reestablish that the titles mean something. that they're not just props, because at this point, if you cut down the titles to where it's just the bare minimum like they used to have, nobody would miss them. But if you reestablish them to the point of where they used to be, even though it's too tough to reestablish all the titles that they have, I don't think it really is, because all you have to do is just give them a little bit of meaning and a little bit of reasoning of why people are striving for those titles. Specifically, the tag team titles. Yes, the process that I suggested could take 2-3 years to really fix, but it'd be worth it, because if you want the titles to mean something, you should really invest the time to fix them. You agree?
Yeah.
Now, I know what your response is going to be when I say that Baron Corbin is going to be the next challenger, or is rumored to be the next challenger for Seth Rollins after AJ Styles, but would you agree that maybe they should have switched them and had Baron be the first challenger for AJ, considering Baron did retire a Kurt Angle?
I guess that makes sense. You know how I feel about him. It's ridiculous, but
I know you would rather Baron Corbin not be in the title contention and maybe be in the United States title contention, because then he would at least be on TV a little less. But at least it would get him out of the way first and save the marquee match, the dream match of AJ Styles and Seth Rollins, which never happened before. Because now they are in, from what I've heard, they're in a directionless feud similar to basically all of AJ's feuds last year. Other than his feud with Randy Orton which started last year and went into this year. I think, from what it started this year and, ended this year. So, most, if not all, of AJ's feuds last year, similar to that. So, you pop the buy rate because you have Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles, but was it worth it? Or would you, in your opinion, would it have been smarter to hold off on AJ and Seth, similarly to how it would have been smarter to hold off to Kevin and Kofi?
Oh, they definitely did. Definitely.
Well, in your opinion, if Kevin Owens is not the challenger to Kofi, who would you have selected to challenge Kofi for the title at Money in the Bank? Or would you have not had Kofi work Money in the Bank?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's any challengers on SmackDown. Well, on SmackDown right now, other than, Finn Balor. But he's the Intercontinental Champion, so he's probably not going to win.
No.
I don't know. It's tough. Maybe I would have probably waited to throw him into some kind of feud
would you have done taken the more like a 1 month approach like they used to do? I want to say like they used to do with the mid card titles. I know like the smaller companies like ECW and Ring of Honor used to do it. But would you have taken the 1 month approach of basically just establishing a challenger and, basically having the predictable first mini feud before a major feud? Because in my opinion, Kevin turning on him and, letting it simmer, as Kevin Sullivan would say, and letting people invest would have been better off. And Kevin Owens even said this, that he was disappointed that they rushed into his heel turn so fast. But I feel like this feud should have been more than it's going to be. And would you have gone with somebody who, even if you knew he was going to lose, at least you would have been able to save the bigger feud for a later date? like a Rusev, or like somebody who's borderline a main eventer, but you know isn't a main eventer, just so you can have a title defense, and get a good match out of it, but not have it where the people expect a long-term feud out of it.
No, I think it's stupid to just throw a feud together for no reason. I think they should have wait until they have a formidable opponent.
So you would have been more along the keep Kofi off TV and maybe just have him on the Kevin Owens show at Money in the Bank or whatever.
Yeah.
Like have him be on the show, just not wrestle, because he doesn't have an opponent yet.
Yeah, instead of just throwing him into a match just for the sake of him having a match.
I mean, even though I just pieced together an easy feud of him feuding with Rusev and Nakamura, and a dusty finish at Money in the Bank, a tag team match the next, a tag team match in between, or a tag team match at Saudi Arabia, and then the blow off in July. With because Kofi has the built-in of Xavier Woods, and whenever Big E comes back, Big E, that if you wanted to do a tag team feud and code in the tag team and the WWE title and all that stuff, you could and extend the feud a little bit by having, especially with another tag team, because that's built in. They have the numbers game. You can have the draw. You can have the, Rusev and Nakamura feud for the title because they're not doing anything. When they're established enough where they could be a legitimate threat to Kofi. But of course the company's not thinking about that. They're rushing into the big summer storyline or the big fall storyline that they're going to do probably at the first episode of SmackDown, or they should have saved for the first episode of SmackDown on Fox. But force your hand when you're worried about the ratings. Or, as I also mentioned, I don't know if I was talking to you, but I know I mentioned it to somebody, that Randy Orton would have been a perfect challenger for Kofi. And you would have been able to get a decent amount of time out of the feud because of their history. The first time Kofi got pushed and him getting his push getting stopped because of Randy. Now Kofi's WWE champion. Randy's coming off a loss from WrestleMania with AJ, but he's Randy Orton. He can take a loss and then go into a WWE title feud because he's Randy Orton. This is the confusing part, and I know you could probably agree. You look up and down the roster and you say, oh, Randy Orton could have been the one. Rusev and Nakamura. Finn Balor. Even if you have, sort of like a title versus title to try and generate interest in both titles. If you would have moved, Drew McIntyre to SmackDown, Drew McIntyre could have been a perfect challenger right away for Kofi.
Yeah.
The Superstar shakeup could have been done a lot better, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely.
It's just puzzling how easy it looks, why they're not doing certain things, and it's like, they may say, oh, the fans aren't invested. Well, you're not giving them time to invest in anything. You're rushing. You're rushing through everything and not giving fans enough time to invest in anything. Kevin Owens in the New Day is a perfect example, because one week he's with the New Day and the next week he's turned his back on him. That should have been 6 months at least of him being with them and being a babyface. Not a untrusting heel, because now you can't do that again. Now you can't have Kevin be the reliable babyface and then turn on his partners because you just did it. You used up the storyline and now you can't do it again. for at least a while, because I mean you could do it with somebody else, but doing it with the same people, this is, should have had a little bit of foresight. In your opinion, I know this is not an easy fix. I know it's not an easy thing to wonder, but if you could change, like if you were sitting there and you had to change anything, like where would you start as far as trying to fix WWE? Like where would the process for you start?
Well, I think part of the problem is like the stupid wild card rule. It's like it doesn't make any sense. What is the point of having two separate shows?
You're right.
I think the first thing that they need to do is start having some, continuity. Like, you're not making any sense. How am I supposed to, continue watching? You just do whatever the hell you want.
Well, apparently they brought in a continuity guy, so I guess he's not doing his job. Or either they brought him in or they're looking for one. I don't remember. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand from recent reports that NBC wanted more continuity on both SmackDown and Raw, like storylines that go back and forth, which is possible because Becky Lynch is a champion on both shows. It is possible, and in my opinion, that's what they should be doing with Shane McMahon and The Miz, or should have been doing with Shane McMahon and The Miz before their blow-off, or hopeful blow-off at Money in the Bank. They should have been keeping them apart until Money in the Bank, and having that be how they establish, well, Shane's on SmackDown, Miz is on Raw now, you gotta keep them separate. But it's kind of puzzling to me why NBC is, like, if NBC really wanted to, why not just tell them get rid of the brand split? You know what I mean? Like, get rid of the brand split. But I guess they can't tell them to do that because SmackDown's leaving NBC in October. It's like, I don't understand what, like, I guess, I mean, it feels like WWE is just going with it because they know people are going to watch either way. Like, they can't figure out how they need to start rebuilding. It's like, I know you didn't watch WCW, but I know you know about them holding on to the past for too long. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, and never really giving young stars a chance to establish themselves. For people to say that that was a detriment to the end of WCW, I disagree, because if you look at a sports team that needs to rebuild, that's not a detriment to the team. That doesn't that doesn't force them to go bankrupt. That just keeps them losing. Once they start rebuilding and once they start refocusing on building for the future, that's when they start slowly but surely moving back to the successful company that they once were, or successful team that they once were. It's not a detriment to WWE. It's that they're just stuck. They want to keep putting band-aids on the problem instead of addressing how bad the problem really is. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
That it's because it's easier to say it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. oh, we can just do this to fix it. But that's just a temporary fix. You know, it's I am gonna get, let's put a pin in this and get back to it in a second, because I just wanted to, something did happen between the time that we last spoke, and that is that Dean Ambrose officially is done with the WWE, as is Dustin Rhodes. But we'll get to Dustin Rhodes in a second when we start talking about AEW. But your thoughts on Dean Ambrose, or officially now Jon Moxley, being back on the Indies?
I think I think WWE always him back.
Oh no, I agree. WWE will welcome him back, but what is your take on? I guess what is your take on the rumors that he's just going to go on a hiatus and then come back to WWE? Do you think he's going to Because I've heard he might end up in TNA. I might, I've heard a lot of possible rumors for Ambrose and his landing spot. What do you think the future holds for Dean Ambrose, other than his upcoming movie appearance?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, I guess the poor connection took out my because I'm just getting a. Okay, we should be good because the poor connection message disappeared. A lot of rumors have been flying around of where Ambrose is going to go. Other than his upcoming movie appearance, what do you think Ambrose is going to do?
Probably going to AEW. See him coming back to WWE.
Do you think it's possible that he just takes a hiatus? That he either way, that if he did go to AEW, that he does not appear for AEW until October? He's not going to appear anytime soon, and he's just going to take time, heal up, and recharge his batteries because of how long he's been on the road to WWE.
I don't know. In that video, probably going to be sooner rather than later.
I do have to agree. I do have to agree with you, because it does seem like I'm just here it is. Apparently according to eWrestling News, Ambrose is expected to start working for other wrestling companies once he's done filming for his role in Cage Fighter. And now I Google Cage Fighter. Or one of us will. Okay, this probably isn't the right. This. Oh, here it is. Wait. I'm not seeing that movie, because apparently there is a lot of other movies with the same name, and either way, Ambrose is apparently a part of a movie, and he won't be returning to wrestling until after filming is done for the movie. Now, did you see his 12 rounds his WWE movie role, or have you seen anything from Ambrose in movies before?
No, I didn't see it.
Do you think that, like, in your opinion, do you think that Dean or John or whatever the heck you want to call him has the chops to make it in movies? Or do you think?
No.
Say it again.
I think so.
I mean, I do agree, because I think one thing that he's always been good at was facial expressions, and you can, like, I feel like better actors have the ability to know, like, have the ability to convey facial expressions properly, or better than people who don't have the chops to do acting. Like, I think Ambrose is probably better than Ken Anderson when Ken Anderson did his movie back in the day. Maybe Ambrose is on the level of, say, The Miz, as far as an actor is concerned. Once Miz starts doing outside WWE works, then we can start maybe saying he's better than him. But I think, as far as the fact that Miz has only been in WWE sponsored products, it's hard to say how good of an actor he is, because he has the media giant behind him promoting the movie. It's not. It's like different. It's sort of like when Cena was in a WWE movie compared to when he was in Trainwreck. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
Now, when you first heard that Goldust is done with WWE and he moved on to AEW, were you surprised? And if you were, how surprised were you to know that Dustin was done with WWE?
To be honest, I didn't know he was still, with the company.
Last I heard, he was healing up from injuries, because I think he had some sort of a surgery last year, which took him off television. But I did not know he was still with the company either. And the initial rumors of him leaving the company, I take it as him not wanting the reports to come out yet, or his contract wasn't actually up when the reports first came up that he was leaving. And when he revealed it, that's when it was up, or he wanted to save it for the Road to Double or Nothing episodic series to reveal that he was the one facing Cody at Double or Nothing. I know that you're probably not going to be watching Double or Nothing for a variety of reasons. But with the fact that now television contracts are being announced for AEW, specifically in Japan and the UK, and the rumor keeps persisting that they are going to be on TNT, or may have been announced for TNT. Will you at least maybe tune in? AEW TV show set to debut on TNT on October 1st.
I'd watch because I'm curious.
Exactly, and that's actually the 2 days before SmackDown debuts on Fox. Would they be able? Would you be? At this point, do you think you would do you think you could still be a weekly watcher of wrestling, or do you think you would be a bi-weekly watcher, or what do you think where do you think you would land on that on the spectrum of watching programming weekly?
Honestly, I don't even really as much as I do. It would probably just be, when I feel like watching.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's DVR, and I know if anything it can be founded from All In last year and Double or Nothing this year, that Cody and the Bucks are very aware of the social media spectrum and the social media ideas, using Fight.tv to advertise the show and broadcast the show. I mean, not advertise the show, broadcast the show, and using YouTube and social media to develop their images and develop the brand that they, got into Hot Topic and all that stuff, specifically for the Bucks and Kenny. But, I mean, would you agree that maybe they've been using social media better than WWE has?
Oh, definitely. Hands down.
And do you think that's going to play to their advantage with AEW?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, and that's... Do you think that will help them establish them as an alternative? Because of how prevalent they are on social media? Or do you think that would just maybe get more people to pay attention to them because of their social media presence? Like, they'll be like, oh, what's this? More than WWE just depending on people knowing the name.
I think out there definitely being a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, totally. I do agree with you that I didn't even know that they were on TV. I thought I heard about the contract being announced. But now that I know I have a, article to write probably next week or whenever, I feel like writing it. Just looking at the post, schedule for the week. Maybe this week, I don't know, but the point is that I am right there with you that out of curiosity I will watch just to see what to expect from AEW on a weekly basis. Will I watch on a weekly basis? I don't know. But I do know that it will be very different to have another wrestling company on the air on a weekly basis other than WWE. I know that Impact has been on the air for a while, but now they're on the Pursuit channel, and I think probably more people get Destination America than the Pursuit channel, which is, maybe... I don't want to insult TNA because I think they've done a lot better recently. It's just that they're, hit or miss for the most part. It's just the fact that TNA hasn't been on a national wrestling hasn't been on another nationally syndicated program channel since TNA left Spike in 2014. So it's been 5 years since another wrestling company has been on a national television station. So it's going to be something very different, especially with the fact that TNT used to be the home for Monday Nitro, and TNT has a long history with, specifically Turner stations have a long history with wrestling, and this is opening a new chapter for it.
Yeah, it's definitely it's done by writers you know, I think it's definitely a competition.
I think they'll be in a competition for viewership because people will be like, "Oh, I don't now. At least I don't have to watch WWE. I can wait till AEW on Tuesday." But as being a competitor to Vince, I don't think it could happen right away, and I don't think they should try and let it happen right away. I think they should let it happen organically because rushing into competing with Vince is a good way to bankrupt yourself. Even though they have the backup of the Khan family, it's not smart to try and fight Vince head on right away. You know, like Billy Corgan said, get there eventually. You know, let it organically build itself. You know, wait a year or 2 years to get the stability, because in my opinion, and you could agree or disagree, that it's more important to have another stable company around rather than having a competitor to Vince McMahon.
No. I agree with what.
You know, because everybody keeps saying, "Oh, well, they're going to compete with Vince. They're going to compete with Vince. It's going to be the war, you know, Monday Night Wars, or you know, the wrestling wars all over again." I think to a point, Jeff Jarrett could be right that we could be approaching another age of prosperity in wrestling. But to say that it could go back to how it used to be, wrestling can never go back to how it used to be because 10 million people will never sit down on one night and watch wrestling like they did in the 90s. It just never happened again. And I think if wrestling's going back to how it was, it should go back to how it was in the 80s, where it was more regional and smaller, to where so much attention's not placed on social, you know, not, I don't want to say social media, but like fans' philosophies, and it's more just placed on the fans letting the bookers who know what they're doing book, rather than them pacifying their own opinions and saying, "Oh, this is what I think they should do." You know, I'm pissed off that I'm not doing this, or I'm pissed off that they're not doing that. Just let them book. You know, don't go back to the 1990s because society won't allow you to go back to that. It's too different. And wrestling will never reach the popularity it did back in the 90s. It could reach the popularity it did back in the 80s, but you need to scale it back. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess that's the type of rebuild that I want WWE to do, not scale it back, but more think about what worked in the past. And just go back to that. Even if they say, "Oh, well, Seth Rollins is world champion. Oh, what can we do with Seth Rollins? Oh, let's get monster heels in and have, establish monster heel after monster heel after monster heel and just feed them to Seth Rollins and keep him champion for a year." Okay, do it. Because that's not something we see. We just saw Brock Lesnar wrestle 6 matches in the span of like 650 days or however long he was champion. So seeing Seth Rollins, a guy who's there every single week, go into, you know, even if it's just, you know, like the old formula of Bruno, how Bruno used to do it, where, you know, 1 month it was count out, 1 month it was disqualification, 1 month it was, and the last month it was a cage match. If you want to do a formula like that, where you do 3 to 6 month feuds for every title title feud for Rollins, and you keep him champion for like a year, do it. Because it would be something different. It would be something different, and it would get more people on the show. It would get, a Braun Strowman in to feud with Seth. It would get Drew McIntyre in to feud with Seth. It would get people who aren't in the company in to feud with Seth. Even if it's just for a few months, you do it. because then you test the guys out to see if they can actually hold their own in a main event level work. Because Lawler did it in Memphis for decades, and it worked. They did it with Bruno for 8 years, and it worked. Yes, people were tired of it by the end, but it hasn't happened since. And I'm not saying every 3 months do a cage match. I'm saying blow it off with a gimmick. I know, in a way, I might be sounding hypocritical saying that WWE, this is what WWE should do, when I'm saying that, AEW should, maybe, the fans should just let AEW book, but WWE is proving that they don't know what they're doing. Like, I'm not saying that in a criticism, I'm saying that, they don't have a plan. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. You follow what I'm saying? Or did I confuse you too?
Confused me a little bit, I'm not gonna
lie. Basically, what I'm saying is, it's clear that WWE doesn't have a plan. But what I'm saying is, I hope that AEW starts with a plan, and that fans just sit there and let them, they make it clear that they have a plan, and fans just let them do their plan and see where it goes. They give them the chance. And then, in my opinion, WWE should go back to what works, like they used to do with Bruno, having 3 to 6 month feuds with heels and just feeding feeding heels to the babyface, and keep Seth champion for, a ridiculous amount of time, because it would be something different. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah.
Or less convoluted?
Yeah.
Would that be something that would get you back, or at least make you tune in a little bit more, if they're actually investing in Seth Rollins and giving him a rare long title reign, and they're giving him feuds every month. They're keeping him on television, and you're actually have directions for the feud and all that stuff. Like you can see that they're actually booking Seth Rollins as the guy, like they used to do for Cena. Super Cena. No, what I mean is, they had Cena feuded with Edge, then he feuded with Umaga, then he feuded with this guy, then he feuded with that guy. He always had a feud, and they always kept him on television. They always kept him doing something. They don't do that with people today. They just put him on TV for no reason.
I don't really know what would get me back.
Honestly, I don't know either. I mean, I think that knowing that, it would probably take at least a month of consistently good shows to get me at least curious enough to tune in to possibly give it a chance. Would you agree that it would take some consistency and continuity of you being aware that they're actually consistently doing good shows, and there's continuity present and all that stuff, that you would at least maybe tune in for a little bit, 20 minutes?
Yeah, if they're making an effort.
Yeah, that's I think that's what they need to do, to show fans that they're actually trying, because right now it doesn't seem like they know what to do. And in my opinion, maybe Vince should just step back, focus on the XFL, and let Triple H take a little bit more control, just to see what he can do. Because what does he have to lose at this point?
Right.
Because I don't know if you heard recently, but apparently Triple H liked a tweet bashing Vince, and then unliked the tweet, of course, because he realized, oh shit, I liked the tweet bashing my father-in-law, saying that the ratings problems were basically Vince's fault.
mean? When saying untrue.
Well, how much of this could you say that maybe, because from what I've heard, Vince is still rewriting the shows and still, like, not sticking with plans that may have been in the work, plans that may have been already mapped out, and rewriting the shows the day of Raw or the day of SmackDown. Like, would you agree that's, undermining the writers and it's not, like, fair to micromanage that, then he, you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. I think he has his own agenda. Like, he's gonna do whatever he wants as long as he's in charge.
Yeah, as long as he, if anybody's gonna sabotage his company, it's gonna be him.
Yeah.
Now, if he goes on the air next Monday and he says he wants to inject a lethal dose of poison into the product, and then he spins around and shows the NWO on the back of the chair like he did, that fateful night in 2002, then, well, if Hulk Hogan comes back with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, I think that's the only way he'll get cheered. But, I mean, now, speaking of that thought did make something pop into my head. If Vince did something similar to that, but it wasn't the NWO, but it was something like that, like he wanted to, like he was playing coy and it was like sort of like he was losing his mind, and he was, worried about the company and, the fact that the ratings weren't getting good and, like they broke down the fourth wall almost and, we're showing like Vince was worried and Vince was getting called in front of the board of directors and, his position as owner was being threatened and, he had to make a big splash and he did something like he did when he introduced the NWO and you could tell it was like the start of a big storyline. Would that at least pique your curiosity?
I don't know. I really like lost something interest.
I also kind of find it funny that I just thought, like, I would say that, like, the philosophy, like, I've watched enough Jim Cornette to be able to, like, think, okay, what would Jim Cornette do? Or what would Eric Bischoff do? Well, I know Eric Bischoff, reality. Jim Cornette would say, well, nothing else is working, so fuck it, just break down the fourth, you're gonna break down the fourth wall, just tell the truth. Or Paul Heyman would do the same thing, tell the truth. Say what's going on. Like breaking, but in my opinion, if you're gonna break the fourth wall, do it in a way where you're not insulting the fans for thinking that it's real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't say, oh, wrestling's not, this isn't real. Oh, I'm not really Triple H. I'm Paul Levesque. Do it in a way of, oh, his job's being threatened. Oh, he could get fired. He could be removed from his position as head of the board. Like, basically do the storyline that they wanted to do in 2011, but stopped for whatever reason when, Vince was getting knocked out and Triple H was getting pulled in and, when Triple H first became COO. But make it real. Because reality is, Vince doesn't need to be a heel anymore. He could be a babyface. Like, he could be the babyface. He could be the sympathetic legend of the company. He doesn't need to be the heel. And if you're playing him as the sympathetic good guy, it would be the perfect time to say, oh, Triple H could turn babyface. He doesn't need to be a heel anymore. He's a babyface on NXT, so he could be a babyface everywhere. Oh, he was a babyface with Triple H, babyface with Batista, so is he a babyface now? I guess you're just gonna have to wait and see who he's fighting in Saudi Arabia. But, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of problems. Well, now the other thing I wanted to ask is, do you think right now, Like, if you had to put a percentage on the likelihood that WWE can at least somewhat stop the bleeding between now and October when they appear on Fox, what percentage would you have to put on that possibility?
I don't know.
Well, a better question is, do you think that now is the perfect time for AEW to appear on television?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. I agree with you, after that awkward silence. I completely agree with you, and I think it's going to help them, especially if WWE has not righted the ship by then, which, God, if they haven't righted the ship by then, they got a problem. Because it would be almost a year of ratings problems at that point, especially going to Fox, which Fox wouldn't tolerate it as much as NBC, because NBC has the previous relationship with WWE. You know, the long-term relationship with WWE. Or the long-time relationship, rather. Okay, yeah, the poor connection just popped up again, so I just wasn't sure if I wanted to talk or not, if you could hear me or not when that was up, so I just waited until it disappeared. But it's funny, in my opinion, because every time we talk, or 9 out of 10 times that we talk, I sometimes think, oh, well, I don't think we're going to make an hour. I don't think we're going to make an hour. Well, if you look at the time, it's an hour and 3 minutes, and I would say we probably spent only a minute off camera talking a little bit before we started recording. So I gotta say, I don't like, time sure flies when we're talking about wrestling, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep hearing myself talking back. It's like super awkward.
Oh no. Oh, that might be playing into the poor connection because it's popping.
Yeah.
But it's okay because we're about to wrap it up. Anyway, but before we go, I would be inept to not at least mention it when you're on camera, that for anybody who has been following social media or any any social media that I have, of course it's been a few months, so that means the next big surprise or whatever. Well, actually, it's probably not a surprise at this point, considering I've been talking about it for months. I have written, the book has been finished. The Sale That Changed Wrestling, a retrospective on the highs and lows of WCW, was completed, but then it was pointed out to me by one of my buddies that because of a disclaimer in one of the books that I used, that I can't actually use any quotes from the book or mention, or he basically said that I could probably summarize it, but suggested that I just take out any mention of the book, so I have to go back and change the book and basically take out some sections and some mentions of information that I got directly from said such book. But that will not hold up the release or the publishing or whatever the case is. The only thing that will hold it up is the cover being drawn or the cover being made, which I am currently talking to people about doing it, or doing the cover. So before we know it, the book will be ready to go, and I'm hoping that it will be sent in to Amazon or specifically Kindle Digital Publishing by the end of May. So hopefully by the end of May there will be an announcement or before the end of May, there will be an announcement that the book has been sent in, and the next time you hear about the sale that changed wrestling, it will be with an Amazon listing attached to it. But either way, the book is done. I think it's at 123 pages at this point and 36,000 words. I've never written anything longer than that. And the best way I can put it is that if you were looking at a newspaper and they did a spotlight piece on a specific topic, that's more to what this is than a long-winded book like other books that have been written about WCW in the past. But also, I'm not Eric Bischoff, I'm not Kevin Sullivan, I'm not J.J. Dillon, I'm not even Guy Evans, who wrote the book last year, because Guy Evans had connections with, people who worked for the company. I'm just a fan who did some research. This is the research. Now you're allowed to talk. I'm done with my monologue.
Oh, no, you're good. That's it's super cool.
Yeah, thank you.
I know you've been excited about it.
I have been. I've been very, I will spoil a little bit about it and say that the final part of Chapter 10 does acknowledge mental health, and does acknowledge my mental health going into the book, and how much I value writing, and the fact that it is surreal to me that I can sit here and say that I've written a book. But that's the point. I know people, critics might say, I'm already talking about critics, but I know people might say that it was inappropriate to include a section about mental health, but that's the problem, that mental health is not talked about as much as it should be, and the reality is I wanted my book to be different, and that's one of the ways it was different.
I applaud for that, because like you said, people don't want to talk about it, and that's a huge part of the issue.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree. And I made sure to include it. And I'll say this right now, and I'll say this, if I know I'm probably going to be going on podcasts after the book is sent in, as it gets closer to publishing, however long it takes to publish. Right now I can say I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know how long it's going to take to publish. I don't know any of that. I will ask Amazon when it's completely finished, when the cover is done, when the book is done and everything is right. I will ask them how long it's going to take to publish, so I can tell people when they ask how long it's going to take to publish. But that's basically all I don't know. But anybody who thinks of anybody who has a problem with that, it's the last chapter. It's the last section. Just don't read it. Because if you read the rest of the book, you still read the book. I don't care. It was my book. I wanted to include it. That's enough. I'm going to say the same thing to... this will be something that I talk about on other podcasts and everything else too as the book gets closer to release. And it's going to be the same answer. You got a problem with it? I don't really care. It was my book. I wanted to include it, so I did. With that being said, if you like the video, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this that you can only find right here at Wrestling Express. And as always, thank you to Sam for joining me for another discussion.
Thank you for having me, boys.
And before we go, don't forget to ding on that notification bell to always know when a new video is up on the channel, even though I don't really post that frequently anymore.